You know, you start looking into sex beyond like the basics, and it's like this hidden current running through absolutely everything. It
Mhm.
pops up in the most unexpected corners, nature, history, even, the stuff we buy every day.
Right.
But sorting through all the information out there, it can feel like a full-time job.
It really can.
Yeah.
And that's sort of why we've gathered a rather, well, a unique collection of material for you today.
Mm-hmm.
We've dug into articles, scientific research, and the frankly unforgettable book, Sex Weird-O-Pedia, the ultimate book of shocking and incredibly bizarre sex facts.
Exactly. Our aim is really to pull out the most mind-blowing and conversation-starting tidbits about sex.
Hmm.
We're talking bizarre animal antic, its surprising impact on commerce, even its role in scientific discovery.
Right.
We just want to give you those wow moments without like drowning you in endless details.
Sort of a shortcut.
Yeah, shortcut. So get ready to have some of your assumptions, well, challenged.
What's immediately striking, I think, is the sheer ingenuity and often just strangeness of sex in the animal kingdom.
Oh, yeah.
It really forces us to reconsider our own kind of narrow, human-centric view of reproduction.
Oh, absolutely. Take leopard slugs. I mean, where do you even start? Their
Right.
penises come out of their heads.
Yeah, out of their heads.
And get this, they're hermaphroditic, so they have both male and female parts.
Both sets of organs.
Their mating ritual even has a name. The chandelier
A
configuration?
chandelier. Yeah. Apparently it's quite a sight.
I bet. With both slugs potentially ending up pregnant, what's
Yeah.
the evolutionary advantage of something that bizarre?
That's a great question. For hermaphroditic species, it's often about maximizing mating opportunities.
Okay.
If every individual you meet is a potential partner, your chances of reproducing go way up.
Right, makes sense.
The head-mounted penis. Well, that's a bit more of a mystery, but it could relate to their specific anatomy and how they, interact.
Fascinating. Then you have sea slugs who have this incredible ability to just well, discard their penis after mating
All right.
and grow a new one within 24 hours.
Yeah, pop out a fresh one.
Talk about a quick turnaround. Is that like a common thing, this kind of reproductive regeneration?
It's pretty rare, actually, but it speaks to the remarkable regenerative abilities some invertebrates have.
Huh.
It might be a way to avoid injury or infection, perhaps.
No?
Or maybe it's about sperm competition.
Oh,
If
okay.
you can mate again quickly with a brand new penis, you might have, an edge.
Incredible. Now, ducks, they seem pretty ordinary, right?
You'd think.
But when it comes to their penises,
Yeah, hold on. Ruddy ducks can have penises over 8 inches long,
over 8 inches.
and they're spiny.
And spiny. That's quite the contrast with the human average. What's the evolutionary reason for such a formidable setup?
That's a prime example of sexual selection and what's called an evolutionary arms race.
Arms race, okay.
Male ducks compete really intensely for mating opportunities.
Right.
So the longer, spiny penis likely evolved to boost the chances of successful fertilization, possibly by overcoming the female duck's attempts to sort of control mating.
Which, as we'll get to, the female ducks definitely evolved their own defenses against. The animal kingdom is just wild.
It really is.
Then there's the female hyena. Her clitoris can extend up to a staggering 7 inches.
7 inches, yeah.
This is quite something.
That's prominent.
Yeah.
Does it work like a penis in other mammals?
Well, in hyenas, the enlarged clitoris is actually part of a really unique and complex social structure.
Oh.
It plays a role in mating, yes, but also in things like urination and even birth, which is highly unusual among mammals.
Wow.
It's a fascinating example of how anatomy gets shaped by a species' specific social and reproductive needs.
You mentioned birth. That sounds complicated.
It is.
Male alligators, on the other hand, have a less obvious but equally surprising thing. Permanent boners hidden inside their bodies.
Always ready.
Yeah, why the always ready state. Well, that permanent erection, even though it's concealed, allows for really rapid mating when the opportunity pops up.
Oh.
Alligators are ambush predators, right? They probably don't have time for, long courtships.
True.
So being constantly prepared means they can capitalize on any mating chance.
Makes sense. Gotta seize the moment. Then you have female penguins apparently engaging in prostitution, trading sex for nest-building stones.
Yeah, it sounds like that, doesn't it?
It sounds less like instinct and more like learned behavior.
It does blur the lines. It highlights how resource-driven some mating behaviors can be.
Right.
Where access to essential stuff, like stones for a nest,
Yeah.
influences sexual interactions. It's a fascinating look at how environmental pressures can shape complex social stuff.
And speaking of resourcefulness, water bugs. They win the award for the loudest animal relative to their size.
Oh, yeah.
Nearly 100 decibels of sound just by rubbing their penis against their abdomen.
100 decibels
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah. That's louder than a lawnmower. What's the point of such a noisy serenade?
That loud stridulation, as it's called, is primarily a mating call.
Okay.
Males use it to attract females. In their often murky water environment, sound travels really well.
Ah, all right.
So it's an effective way to advertise, hey, I'm over here and I'm fit.
A tiny insect putting on a sonic boom just to get lucky. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Barnacles also show incredible adaptability. They adjust the shape of their penises to better suit their environment if they get moved.
That flexibility is key.
How crucial is that for them?
Well, for sessile organisms like barnacles, creatures stuck in one place, this kind of plasticity is vital.
Right, they can't just wander off.
Exactly. They can't move around to find the perfect mate, so they need to be able to reach out and connect with whoever happens to be nearby.
Yeah.
A flexible penis maximizes their chances of successful fertilization in a changing environment.
And then we get to the truly extreme. Argentine lake ducks using their 17-inch corkscrew penises like a lasso.
17 inches corkscrew.
Yeah. That's the longest bird penis ever recorded. It sounds almost like something out of science fiction.
It is quite remarkable. This highly specialized penis has evolved because of intense competition among males. And, like we touched on earlier, it's driven a corresponding evolution in female duck anatomy.
Which includes these elaborate vaginas that twist in the opposite direction.
Exactly.
It's like a biological lock and key, or maybe more like a biological obstacle course.
Right. But only about 3% of bird species actually have penises.
Only 3%. Why is that? What do the other 97% do?
Well, the main theory is that losing the penis in most birds was an adaptation for flight-reducing weight and drag.
Ah, makes sense.
Those that don't have one rely on the cloacal kiss.
Cloacal kiss.
Yeah, a brief pressing together of the cloaca that's the shared opening for reproduction and excretion to transfer sperm.
Okay.
And interestingly, bird erections often rely on lymph fluid, not blood.
Yeah.
Another weight-saving adaptation, probably.
Nature's just full of surprises. Kangaroos have 3 vaginas. Snakes have 2-pronged penises. It's like evolution was just throwing stuff at the wall to see what stuck.
Experimenting, yeah.
And even something as simple as a mating call can trigger a physiological response. Female wildebeests ovulate faster just by hearing the calls of males.
Their bodies just react.
Like they're on a hair trigger.
Exactly. It's a hormonal response kicked off by the presence of a potential mate. It increases the likelihood of successful fertilization when mating actually happens.
Yeah.
Very efficient, evolutionarily speaking.
Even animals in captivity can be drawn in by our human world. Tigers and jaguars are apparently attracted to Calvin Klein's obsession for men, cologne.
Obsession for men. Really?
Yeah. What does that tell us about the power of scent across species?
It really highlights the fundamental role of smells, olfactory cues in animal communication and attraction. While the specific chemicals might be different, the basic mechanisms of how scents trigger behavior seem to be, conserved across many species.
Even turkeys have their own bizarre mating rituals. They'll try to mate with just a severed turkey head on a stick.
A head on a stick.
But not a headless corpse.
Okay.
It's like there's a very specific checklist of what makes a viable mate.
It probably relates to the key visual cues that trigger mating behavior in turkeys.
Right.
The head might be the most important signal of a potential partner, while a body without a head might just override that recognition.
Who knew turkeys were so particular? Now, brace yourself for this one.
Oh.
Crows, dolphins, whales, squirrels, toads, and lizards have all been documented engaging in necrophilia.
Wow, that's quite a list. And yeah, unsettling.
What could possibly explain that kind of behavior?
It's complex and honestly not fully understood. It could be a form of misidentification, especially in species with strong social bonds or long parental care. In other cases, it might be related to dominance displays or maybe even just stress or lack of appropriate outlets in certain situations.
Dolphins, as we know, are super intelligent and, well, sometimes overly enthusiastic.
They can be.
Apparently, their penises are usually erect. So much so that one particularly amorous dolphin in France led to a beach swimming ban.
A swimming ban because of a horny dolphin.
Yep. That's a pretty unusual public safety concern.
It certainly highlights the challenges of interspecies interactions, especially when strong biological drives are involved.
Right.
And speaking of unusual displays of, well, reproductive organs, there's the Icelandic Phallogenic Museum,
Oh, I've heard of that.
dedicated entirely to penises, from nearly 300 species, including humans.
Wow.
Someone even wants to donate his own, nicknamed Elmo, after he dies.
Elmo. That's some serious dedication to anatomical appreciation.
It certainly is.
Ugh.
On a slightly less preserved note, female trapdoor spiders have a pretty ingenious way of attracting mates.
Oh, yeah.
They spin a silk mat soaked in pheromones,
A pheromone welcome mat. Forget swiping.
a very direct, chemically specific form of attraction. Then you have yellow armadillos showing impressive multitasking. They have sex while running.
While running.
Mm-hmm. Female prairie voles get aroused by their partner's urine,
Okay.
and rabbits sometimes urinate on each other before mating.
Right. A different kind of courtship, to say the least.
Yeah.
What might be the purpose of these less conventional forms of foreplay?
Well, in prairie voles, the urine likely contains pheromones, signaling the male's reproductive status, genetic compatibility, that sort of thing.
Ah, okay. Chemical signals?
For rabbits, it could be about establishing dominance or marking territory in a social context related to mating. And for armadillos, well, perhaps it's simply a matter of efficiency. Got to get it done on the move.
Definitely not something you see in human dating rituals. And talk about a long-term commitment to abstinence. There's a species of asexual translucent worm.
Asexual.
Yeah, that hasn't had sex in over 18 million years.
18 million years.
That really puts any human dry spell into perspective. What allows a species to thrive for so long without sexual reproduction?
Asexual reproduction can be highly successful in stable environments. Where genetic diversity isn't as crucial for survival, these worms likely reproduce through parthenogenesis or something similar, creating genetically identical offspring that are perfectly suited to their little niche.
So, if your environment isn't changing much, why bother with all the hassle of sex?
Exactly. Female rodents have a fascinating biological mechanism. They'll actually miscarry if they detect pheromones from unfamiliar males.
Wow, that's brutal.
It's a form of post-copulatory sexual selection. By ending a pregnancy with a potentially less fit or incompatible male, the female saves resources and can potentially mate with a better partner later.
Nature's quality control. Even space isn't immune to the topic of sex. Astronauts have artificially inseminated frog eggs in space.
Frog eggs, okay.
And the first pregnant mammals in space were rats on a U.S. spacecraft.
Rats in space. What are the big questions scientists are trying to answer with these extraterrestrial reproductive experiments?
Well, these experiments are crucial for understanding the effects of microgravity and radiation on reproductive processes.
Right, for long-term travel.
Exactly. As we consider long-duration space travel and maybe colonizing other planets, we need to know how these fundamental biological functions hold up.
Makes sense. Got a plan for the future of space babies. Just as humans have aphrodisiacs, so do animals. Male crickets produce an edible jelly during ejaculation for the female.
Edible jelly. Talk about a sweet deal.
It's a form of nuptial gift. Provides the female with nutrients that can help with egg production. It's a direct trade. Resources for reproductive success.
And small birds engage in mobbing owls, ganging up on them not just for defense, but apparently to show off their bravery to potential mates.
Showing off their skills.
Yeah, it's like a feathered display of courage and competence.
Signaling fitness to potential mates is super common in the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
Demonstrating you can defend yourself and your territory is a key indicator of good genes and, good parenting potential.
In our very human world, we now have apps to track our dog's menstrual cycles.
Of course we do.
Of course. And on a less successful note, Russia's space agency sent geckos into orbit for a space sex mission.
Geckos. For sex.
Yeah, but sadly, they froze to death.
Oh no. A tragic end to a scientific endeavor.
Yeah. But nature often finds a way. Australian scientists discovered a zebra shark named Leonie who gave virgin births after previously mating.
Virgin births. After mating.
Yeah, she's the first known shark to reproduce both ways.
Wow.
Then there's the brown-banded bamboo shark that had a virgin birth years after mating. It suggests they can store sperm with intact DNA for incredibly long periods.
That's some impressive sperm longevity. Years.
It really is. Throws a whole new light on reproductive strategies. Speaking of long-term commitment, male deep-sea anglerfish take it to an extreme.
The anglerfish, right.
They permanently attach themselves parasitically to females, becoming little more than sperm donors.
That's a pretty one-sided relationship.
Definitely.
It's an adaptation to how scarce mates are down there in the deep ocean. Once a male finds a female, this permanent attachment ensures a constant supply of sperm.
Female guppies can store sperm from multiple males simultaneously, even dead ones.
Even dead ones, wow.
That's quite the reproductive resource management. And in a curious trade-off, male bats with larger brains tend to have smaller testicles.
Brains versus balls, huh?
Pretty much. It's like there's a limited energy budget.
It suggests a potential allocation trade-off, right, between cognitive investment and reproductive investment. More brain power might be better for finding mates or navigating complex social stuff, while maybe large tests are less crucial in their particular niche.
Brains over. Well, even our pharmaceuticals are having unexpected effects on the animal world. Fish apparently become hornier when their water supply is contaminated by drugs like Prozac.
Prozac makes fish horny.
Seems so. That has some pretty concerning ecological implications, right?
It really highlights the unintended consequences of our wastewater on aquatic ecosystems, how pharmaceuticals can disrupt the natural behaviors of wildlife.
Finally, a fun fact. Filmmakers often use animal mating sounds like tortoises getting busy.
Tortoises mating.
Yeah, to create dinosaur sounds in movies like Jurassic Park.
No way. So the roar of a T-Rex was just amorous reptiles.
Apparently so. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and dive into how sex shows up in the world of commercial products.
Ah, yes, the marketplace.
This is where human ingenuity and sometimes absurdity really shines.
Indeed. It's fascinating to see how this fundamental biological drive is not only reflected, but also actively, shaped and commodified.
Forget those seductive cologne commercials. One study actually suggests that men's cologne can turn women off and even reduce vaginal blood flow.
Really? Turn them off.
Yeah. So much for attracting a mate with a spritz. Makes you wonder about all that marketing, doesn't it?
It's a good reminder that marketing stories don't always line up with biological reality. Sometimes less is more, maybe.
Right. In the Middle Ages, people used weasel nuts as contraception.
Weasel nuts.
Yeah. The charming belief was that tying them around a woman's thigh or neck would prevent pregnancy.
Wow. Talk about a natural, if somewhat bizarre, remedy.
You can't make this stuff up. And Casanova, the legendary lover, supposedly used pulped lemon as a contraceptive.
Lemon pulp.
Talk about relying on whatever's in the fruit bowl.
Well, necessity is often the mother of invention, right?
Yeah.
Even for contraception.
True. Fast forward to the 21st century, and there's an app called Morning Glory.
Morning Glory.
Yeah, that helps men track how often they get boners.
Why would?
Okay.
Because apparently that's crucial data to have at your fingertips.
Right. It's the quantified self taken to a whole new level. And the Italian fashion company Fendi sells a nearly $1,000 scarf that looks suspiciously like a vulva.
A vulva scarf.
Yep.
For $986.
Yep. Wearing it is apparently meant to evoke a sense of being born. Fashion certainly makes some bold statements.
It definitely blurs the lines between fashion, art, and the overtly sexual. Sparks conversation, I guess, and maybe a bit of bemusement.
Even seemingly ordinary companies have surprising origins. The Oneida Silverware Company.
Yeah, spoons and forks.
Started as a utopian community with some rather unconventional views on relationships and, well, intimacy. Open sex, basically.
From shared spouses to selling spoons. That's quite the brand evolution.
It really is. If you're ever in a pinch, apparently phone vibration apps can double as makeshift vibrators.
Uh-oh.
Just remember hygiene.
A decidedly modern and perhaps somewhat risky application of everyday tech.
Clorox, the bleach company, even created an app called Socket.
Clorox.
Yeah. It let college students discreetly signal to roommates when they were expecting company, named after the classic dorm room sock on the door signal.
A sock app from Clorox. Not sure that boosted their cleaning product sales.
You think? And get this. Cock rings used to be made out of goat eyelids.
Goat eyelids. That sounds incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And potentially unsanitary, to say the least.
Right.
One wonders about the durability and comfort.
Right. The actor who famously played Barney the Purple Dinosaur
Barney.
now runs a tantric sex business.
No, from Barney to Tantra. That's a career change that might surprise some parents.
From children's entertainment to adult enlightenment, I guess. Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop had to pay a hefty settlement over unscientific claims about the benefits of a 66-color jade egg inserted into the vagina.
The jade egg.
Yeah. Apparently, it wasn't the magical cure-all they claimed. It highlights the importance of skepticism with these wellness products.
Absolutely. Marketing claims in this area should always be approached critically and ideally backed by actual science.
Just as Wonder Bras are designed to enhance the bust, Lee Cooper created Packet Jeans specifically designed to enhance men's frontal profile.
Packet genes.
Okay.
It's all about creating a certain impression,
Yeah.
playing up those assets.
Mm-hmm. Strip club owners have become incredibly resourceful in evading bans.
Oh, yeah.
Rebranding is everything from RV centers to Churches of the Fuzzy Bunnies and even staging nude Shakespeare performances.
Mood Shakespeare. You have to admire their creativity, if not necessarily the artistic outcome.
It speaks to the enduring demand for adult entertainment, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And it also highlights the ongoing tension between regulation and consumer demand in the sector.
Alfred Kinsey's groundbreaking sex research, while controversial, had a huge impact, even influencing marketing. There was even a book of poems advertised as the Kinsey Report in verse.
The Kinsey Report in verse. Because what says titillating like iambic pentameter?
Right. An unexpected intersection of science and art, or attempted art.
Believe it or not, in 1946, Walt Disney actually animated a film for Kotex about menstruation.
Disney did a menstruation film.
Yeah. Pretty surprising topic for the studio behind Mickey Mouse.
It shows that even historically taboo subjects can enter mainstream media, I guess.
Often in a somewhat sanitized or educational way, maybe?
Yeah. Menstrual product advertising was actually banned on U.S. television until 1972.
Really? Until 72.
And these products used to be sold discreetly, like behind the counter. Even today, there are weird disparities, right?
Like what?
Some states taxing tampons while exempting products like Viagra.
Huh. The tampon tax. It raises questions about how we value different health products.
Definitely. The lack of understanding around menstruation was highlighted when NASA famously asked Sally Ride if 100 tampons would be enough for her week-long space journey.
100 for a week.
The actual average is closer to 20.
Wow. Underscores the need for basic scientific literacy, maybe.
A rather significant overestimation. Back in the 90s, a company called Time of the Month Inc. actually sold novelty snacks like PMS Crunch.
PMS Crunch.
Because what better way to deal with hormonal fluctuations than with a themed snack? Talk about niche marketing.
Appealing to those very specific cravings, you can even buy tampons made out of bamboo online now.
Bamboo tampons.
Eco-friendly period products are becoming more available. Reflects a growing consumer awareness of sustainability, I guess.
It does. Wilhelm Reich, a rather controversial figure, developed these orgone boxes.
Run boxes.
They
yeah.
were supposed to contain some kind of life force energy. They gained a following among some countercultural types, and Woody Allen famously spoofed them as the orgasmatron.
From fringe science to comedic fodder.
Right. Bikini swimsuits got their name for their intended shock value, named after the atomic bomb tests at Bikini Atoll.
Wow. Talk about an explosive marketing strategy.
Pun absolutely intended, I'm sure.
Yeah.
There's a trend in the wine world towards natural wines, fertilized with horse manure.
Horse manure wine.
And one sommelier even claimed the smell triggered some sexual stuff.
Okay.
Certainly adds a new dimension to wine tasting.
To each their own olfactory experience, I suppose. Here's a surprising connection. Breakfast cereal. Kellogg's, Corn Flakes, and graham crackers were actually invented by preachers with strong anti-masturbation beliefs.
Wait, really? Cornflakes?
Yeah. They hoped that bland diets would curb what they considered sinister urges.
A rather unexpected origin story for breakfast staples.
It highlights the pervasive societal anxieties around sex back then, right? How even diet was seen as a tool for moral control.
Yeah. During that same Victorian period, women diagnosed with the catch-all term hysteria.
Right,
They
hysteria.
were sometimes treated with manual vaginal massages by doctors.
Whoa, a rather hands-on approach to a vaguely defined ailment.
A rather intimate and potentially exploitative cure.
Viagra, as many know, was famously discovered by accident.
The Pfizer story, yeah.
They were testing a heart medication that had an unexpected side effect.
Yeah,
Erections.
a happy accident for millions. A serendipitous discovery that revolutionized ED treatment and had a huge cultural impact.
At a urology conference, a physiologist named Giles Brinley famously demonstrated the effectiveness of impotence drugs
How?
by injecting himself and presenting his erect penis to the audience.
He did what? Talk about a memorable presentation technique.
Certainly got his point across. Other doctors have also taken to self-experimentation with sex drugs. One endocrinologist apparently had an erection that lasted a full 8 hours.
8 hours. They were clearly onto something. Sometimes firsthand experience is the most compelling evidence.
Doctors even used a low-tech method to test for nocturnal erections. The postage stamp roll test.
Postage stamps. How did that work?
You wrap a roll around the penis at night. If the stamps broke overnight, it was a sign of activity.
A surprisingly simple diagnostic tool. In Egypt, Viagra has even become like an alternative currency for bribes.
Viagra for bribes.
It's become a valuable commodity in more ways than one. It underscores the global demand and perceived value of the drug, even outside its intended medical use.
For years in the U.S., insurance companies often covered Viagra but not birth control pills.
Right. A rather telling reflection of societal priorities around sexual health.
The implications of that coverage disparity are certainly worth considering. Before Viagra, treatments for impotence included things like vacuum pumps and penile surgeries,
Right, yeah.
which were reportedly more cosmetic than functionally reliable.
Speaks to the historical challenges of addressing this issue and the lengths people would go to find solutions.
Sex toys, believe it or not, have archaeological evidence dating back at least 30,000 years.
30,000 years, wow.
A very long history of human self-exploration, a truly ancient industry. A ventriloquist named Ted Marché became a surprising pioneer in the strap-on dildo business.
A ventriloquist, another unexpected career trajectory.
Right. It shows how individuals from diverse backgrounds can contribute to the evolution of this market.
Alabama technically bans the sale of sex toys,
Bans them.
but with a rather specific loophole for medical, scientific, educational purposes.
Ah, the loophole.
One enterprising shop took advantage by having customers fill out questionnaires about their sexual health,
Okay.
and even operates a drive-through service out of an old bank.
A drive-through sex toy shop. Only in America.
You said it! Okay, let's now turn to the world of sex and science, trying to understand the biological, psychological, and evolutionary reasons behind all this.
Right. Moving from anecdote to systematic inquiry. Trying to explain the why behind the what.
Exactly.
Sex might feel like a decent workout, but scientifically speaking, it's not that calorically intensive.
Oh, really?
You'd have to go at it for nearly 200 minutes to burn the same calories as a 30-minute run. Mowing the lawn is actually more effective.
Mowing the lawn burns more calories.
Yeah.
A rather sobering assessment for those using sex as their main workout.
Maybe skip the post-coital nap and grab the gardening tools.
In a study of pregnant women in the U.S., about 1% claimed they were virgins when they gave birth.
1% claimed virgin birth.
Science struggles to account for those self-reported virgin births.
It certainly raises some interesting questions about either biology or, well, honesty.
It's common for men's testicles to differ in size and position, right? The left one typically hangs a bit lower.
Yeah, why is that? Any evolutionary reason?
It's thought that this slight difference in positioning helps regulate temperature,
Ah, temperature control.
which is crucial for optimal sperm production. By not being directly side by side, they can avoid overheating.
Makes sense. Keeping things cool down there is important. Pavlov's associate, W. Horsley Gaunt, managed to condition dogs
Pavlov's dogs,
to get erections and ejaculate just to the sound of specific tones.
Wow. Talk about a physiological response to a learned stimulus.
It's a fascinating demonstration of classical conditioning extending even to complex sexual arousal responses.
The Smell and Taste Treatment and Research Foundation found that the scent of pumpkin pie and lavender can increase blood flow to men's penises by a surprising 40%.
40% just from pumpkin pie and lavender smell.
Who knew your Thanksgiving dessert could be so stimulating?
Definitely an unexpected aromatic aphrodisiac. Makes you wonder what other everyday scents might have subtle effects.
Most of the clitoris is actually internal,
Right, not just the visible part.
and it has a shaft. It's a much more complex organ than many people realize. Understanding its full anatomy and function is crucial for understanding female sexual response.
Absolutely. And it's actually possible for fraternal twins to have different fathers.
Wait, really? Different dads for twins.
Yeah, that's a biological quirk most people probably aren't aware of. A rather unusual outcome of separate fertilizations happening close together.
The Nobel Prize-winning gas nitric oxide plays a key role in achieving erections
How does it work?
by relaxing and widening blood vessels. It's the science behind the firmness. Understanding these biological mechanisms has been fundamental to developing ED treatments.
The pioneering sex researcher, Richard von Krafft-Ebing, wrote his big work, Psychopathia Sexualis, in Latin.
In Latin. Why?
Presumably to limit its accessibility to the general public because of its explicit content, a way of keeping his findings somewhat exclusive.
A reflection of the societal sensitivities back then, I guess. Erotic asphyxiation, the practice of inducing oxygen deprivation for sexual arousal,
Dangerous stuff.
is believed to have originated as a rather dangerous treatment for impotence. Definitely not a recommended therapy.
Absolutely not. Severe risks there. The philosopher René Descartes, known for "I think, therefore I am,"
Right, the rationalist.
apparently had a particular attraction to cross-eyed women.
Cross-eyed women. Beauty truly is in the eye of the beholder, or perhaps the slightly misaligned eye.
Individual preferences certainly vary widely. Even scientific giants have their quirks. Albert Einstein married his first cousin.
Einstein did. Wow. A practice that was more socially acceptable in his time, though.
Right. Consanguineous marriages weren't uncommon historically, though our understanding of the genetics has evolved.
The ancient Greek philosopher Anaxagoras believes that semen from the left testicle produced girls, while the right produced boys.
Left for girls, right for boys. Not exactly accurate.
No, but an early attempt to understand sex determination. Early theories were often based on observation and guesswork rather than science.
In the 18th century, a French anatomist even advised cutting off the left testicle for a better chance of having a son.
Cutting it off. Talk about a drastic and unfounded intervention.
It highlights how deeply ingrained beliefs could be, even influencing medical advice. Charles Darwin also married his first cousin.
Darwin, too, as we noted, more common back then.
Havelock Ellis, another key figure in early sexology, was himself impotent,
Oh, really?
but reported being aroused by women expelling urine. He also believed fetishes often started in childhood. Shows the diversity of human sexual interests.
Ellis's work, while sometimes controversial, contributed a lot to a more open scientific study of sexuality, including recognizing diverse attractions.
Kinsey's famous sex research, while methodologically debated today, produced some provocative findings.
Like what?
Like the claim that the average penis length of gay men was slightly longer than that of heterosexual men?
Huh. Important to interpret such findings carefully, though, given the methods back then.
Absolutely. Scientific understanding evolves, have to consider the limitations. Even the language we use changes.
How so?
The phrase losing virginity has largely been replaced by the more neutral term sexual debut.
Ah, right. Reflects a shift away from moralistic framing. Social science terms often evolve to be more descriptive, less judgmental.
Interestingly, anxiety can actually increase sexual attraction.
Anxiety can. How?
Remember the classic shaky bridge study? Men were more likely to find a woman attractive after crossing a dangerous suspension bridge. They misattributed their fear for arousal.
Wow. Shows how our emotions can influence our perceptions. The brain is powerful and sometimes easily fooled.
Some doctors even believe that orgasms can help relieve sinus pressure.
Orgasms for sinuses, an unexpected potential health benefit.
While more research is needed, the physiological changes during orgasm muscle contractions, hormones could potentially have some decongestant effects for some people.
Nocturnal erections are a normal thing, right? Caused by blood vessel engorgement during dreams. The body often has its own agenda while we sleep.
It certainly does. And seemingly irrational sexual behaviors might have had evolutionary advantages way back when.
How so?
Driven by the imperative to pass on our genes, even if those behaviors don't always seem logical now. The selfish genes idea.
Right. Behaviors that promote gene survival, even at the individual's expense, can be selected for over time.
Despite some claims, NASA officially states no confirmed human sexual activity has ever happened in space.
None confirmed.
But a Russian astronaut's joking comment about it being done by hand suggests the topic is certainly on people's minds.
The challenges of zero-gravity intimacy are probably considerable.
NASA did send human and bull sperm to space, though,
Why bullspur?
to study the effects of microgravity on sperm motility, crucial for understanding reproduction feasibility in space, part of planning for future space colonies.
Right. Understanding the fundamentals in altered gravity is essential. The first person to ever observe sperm cells was Antony van Leeuwenhoek.
Leeuwenhoek, the microscope guy.
He called them animalcules. A pivotal moment in understanding reproduction, a foundational discovery.
Ovulation has a range of fascinating effects on women, doesn't it?
Like what?
They report stronger desire to cheat, use less contraception, feel more attractive, and men apparently find women's natural odors more appealing during ovulation.
Hormones broadcasting signals, basically. All hormonal shifts designed to increase the likelihood of successful reproduction during the fertile window.
Premature ejaculation, often seen as a dysfunction today,
Yeah.
may have actually had evolutionary advantages in the past by increasing the chances of inseminating multiple females quickly. An interesting, if perhaps uncomfortable, evolutionary perspective.
It certainly challenges our modern understanding of normal sexual function. Evolutionary psychology also suggests men and women react differently to infidelity.
Right. Men more distressed by sexual infidelity, women by emotional infidelity.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah.
Likely tied to different evolutionary concerns about paternity versus resource security. Our history shapes our emotional responses.
And genetics might even play a role in infidelity. Specific genes linked to a higher likelihood.
It seems so. Not deterministic, but suggests a biological predisposition in some individuals.
So it's not always just about willpower. The coital coronary study estimated that over 10,000 Americans die during sex each year.
10,000? That's
Right.
surprisingly high.
A sobering reminder that even pleasurable activities carry some risks. Factors like age and pre-existing heart conditions play a big role.
And in the 1960s, NASA-funded dolphin research apparently involved a human researcher masturbating a male dolphin.
What?
All in the name of science, it seems. Highlights some of the more unconventional methods used in scientific inquiry.
You said it. Okay, let's move on to a maybe less arousing topic. Sex and sexually transmitted diseases.
Right, a critical area with some surprising trends in history. Absolutely vital.
We're actually seeing a concerning rise in STD rates among older adults.
Older adults.
Really? Yeah. In the U.S., chlamydia has doubled, and gonorrhea has tripled in people aged 55 and older since 2010.
Wow. Shows STDs aren't just a concern for younger people.
Exactly. Factors like reduced awareness, changes in relationships, maybe less consistent condom use are likely contributing.
Penicillin, the first really effective antibiotic against many STDs, was famously an accidental discovery.
Alexander Fleming, right. The moldy petri dish.
Talk about a lucky find. But the overuse of antibiotics has led to a growing problem, antibiotic-resistant gonorrhea,
Right, the superbugs.
becoming increasingly hard to treat. A reminder our medical advances can have unintended consequences, underscores the need for responsible antibiotic use in new research.
One economist has even argued that penicillin, not the birth control pill, was the real driver of the sexual revolution.
Penicillin, not the pill. How?
By drastically reducing the fear of syphilis, it may have led to more risk-taking behavior and an increase in out-of-wedlock births.
Huh. An interesting, if debatable, perspective on the social impact of medical breakthroughs. A fascinating counterintuitive argument.
Circumcision, a relatively simple procedure, has been shown by the WHO to reduce the risk of men transmitting HIV to their partners by a significant 60%.
60%. That's a clear public health benefit in certain contexts. Highlights the role of even minor physical interventions.
During the AIDS epidemic in Africa, drug companies initially resisted lowering prices for life-saving meds.
Yeah, that was terrible.
They later offered reductions largely due to public pressure. Some companies even sued South Africa for trying to make drugs more affordable.
A stark illustration of the ethical dilemmas around access to essential medicines. A really difficult chapter.
In Cuba, during the 80s, some punks intentionally infected themselves with HIV.
Intentionally. Why?
To be quarantined in what they saw as better conditions than jail. A desperate act reflecting harsh realities.
Tragic. Shows how social and political conditions intersect with public health crises.
It's important to remember not all STDs are transmitted just through intercourse.
Right. Like herpes and genital warts.
Yes, spread through simple skin-to-skin contact. And gonorrhea can even infect the eyes.
The eyes, wow. Underscores the varied ways these infections transmit, highlighting the importance of understanding different modes.
To educate young people about STDs, there have been some creative approaches, like comic books.
Comic books.
Featuring superheroes like Captain Condom and Lady Latex battling villains like Admiral AIDS and Sergeant Syphilis.
Captain Condom versus Admiral AIDS. Talk about a memorable public health campaign. Unconventional, but maybe effective.
Before the mid-19th century, most condoms were made from animal intestines.
Animal intestines. Not exactly convenient or appealing. A far cry from latex.
Yeah.
Definitely less user-friendly.
Now you can even find vegan condoms.
Vegan condoms.
Made without the milk protein found in typical ones, caters to a growing niche market with specific ethical or dietary preferences.
Absolutely. The discovery of the rubberized dome cover, a precursor to the modern condom, was another accident. Charles Goodyear's unintentional vulcanization of rubber.
Serendipity strikes again in sexual health history.
It really does. Goodyear himself even advertised his vulcanized rubber for nipple shields and gonorrhea bags.
Gonorrhea bags, a rather blunt marketing strategy for the time.
Times have certainly changed in how we market these products. PSI, a health organization, faced controversy for a condom ad in Botswana
What was wrong with it?
that featured a young girl with an older man, raising ethical and legal concerns about portraying minors in sexual health campaigns. a reminder of the sensitivities involved.
While the Catholic Church is often associated with opposing condoms,
Right.
the first written description of their use to prevent disease actually comes from a 16th century Catholic cleric, Gabriele Fallopio.
Fallopian, like the tubes?
Yep. He recommended linen sheaths to prevent syphilis. A surprising historical connection highlights the complex history surrounding contraception within religious institutions.
The economic impact of condom regulations in the porn industry is also interesting. When LA County mandated condoms on porn sets,
Yeah.
there was a big drop in permit applications. Meanwhile, Las Vegas, with no mandate, saw production increase. Shows how regulations can influence industry location.
Economic incentives driving behavior. In 2018, Trojan Condoms was reportedly the second most popular producer of sandwich videos on YouTube.
Sandwich videos.
Yeah.
Trojan. A rather unexpected foray into online viral marketing. Creative way to reach an audience, I guess.
The largest condom ever created was a massive 72-foot-high sheath,
72 feet.
placed over the Luxor obelisk in Paris for World AIDS Day in 1993. A powerful visual statement to raise awareness. Truly memorable.
Finally, the largest collection of condoms belongs to an Italian man with over 2,000.
2,000 condoms.
Including one made from sheep's bowel from the 19th century. That's some serious dedication to collecting. A unique historical archive.
Now let's delve into the often contentious realm of sex and pornography.
Ah, yes. A significant and ever-evolving part of our cultural landscape, with its own surprising history, tech connections, and legal battles.
When straight men are browsing porn online, apparently they search for penises almost as often as they search for vaginas.
Really? Penises as much as vaginas. That certainly challenges some assumptions about the male gaze. Suggests a broader spectrum of interests.
It does. Microfiche technology used in libraries
Yeah, the little film slides.
has an unexpected connection to pornography. Its 19th century precursor, the Stanhope, was a tiny optical device for viewing microscopic photos, often erotic ones.
Stanhopes. Wow. A hidden history of tech facilitating private consumption of adult imagery. Technology driven by curiosity. Maybe naughtiness.
President Reagan's Commission on Pornography, the Mies Commission.
Right. Concluded it was harmful.
Ironically, the report contains such detailed descriptions of sex acts that some religious bookstores refused to stock it because it was considered too explicit.
No. The report itself was too graphic. You can't make this stuff up. Shows the complexities and contradictions around regulating porn.
Even early video games weren't immune. The Atari 2600 had a rather suggestive title called Beat 'em and Eat 'em.
Beat 'em and eat 'em on Atari. Definitely not family-friendly gaming. Probably not one for game night.
Many academic studies on porn's effects have been criticized for their artificial viewing context,
How so?
often not taking into account the natural release with masturbation, hard to replicate real-world use in a lab. As economist Stephen Landsberg quipped, the pornus interruptus of the lab doesn't reflect typical consumption.
Pornography actually played a big role in driving the development of internet infrastructure,
Really?
creating huge demand for bandwidth in the early days of the web, a major catalyst for expanding online capabilities, from illicit images to fueling the information superhighway.
The porn industry continues to be a hotbed of tech innovation,
Like what?
pioneering things like computer-controlled sex toys, VR experiences, realistic sex avatars, always pushing boundaries, adapting to new tech and consumer desires.
Congress's attempt to regulate online porn with the Communications Decency Act
Yeah.
inadvertently encouraged credit card use for age verification, which actually made online porn more accessible. Unintended consequences. Regulations sometimes have the opposite effect.
Playboy even won a Supreme Court case against the Telecommunications Act,
What'd that do?
eliminated the requirement for cable providers to scramble sexually oriented programming, a victory for unscrambled entertainment. Landmark legal battles shaped the landscape.
Esquire magazine also won a Supreme Court case back in 1946 against the Postal Service over mailing salacious photos.
Uh-huh.
And a 1969 Supreme Court ruling further solidified the right to privacy regarding possessing obscene material at home. These cases set important precedents, defining boundaries.
Interestingly, Larry Flint, the publisher of Hustler, paradoxically wanted obscenity to remain illegal. He believed its vice status actually helped maintain its appeal and profitability.
Huh. A counterintuitive business strategy. The forbidden fruit is often the most enticing.
When Denmark lifted its obscenity laws in 1969, a researcher observed the immediate reaction to readily available porn was often
Boredom.
Mm.
Maybe the novelty wears off when it's not taboo. The allure of the forbidden plays a role.
It got to the point where a University of Montreal study trying to find men who had never watched pornography
Yeah.
had to be abandoned, couldn't find any participants, really underscores its widespread consumption.
Despite its reputation, Playboy magazine actually featured articles by acclaimed writers.
Like who?
Truman Capote, Joyce Carol Oates, Ray Bradbury. Even FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover was reportedly obsessed with the magazine for debated reasons.
Bought it for the articles, indeed. Playboy even hosted its first White House Correspondents' Dinner Party in 2018.
Really? Signaling a potential shift in its perception, maybe. From centerfold to the Beltway, a sign of its evolving place.
Surprisingly, Playboy founder Hugh Hefner didn't lose his virginity until he was 22.
Hefner. At 22. A somewhat unexpected detail about the man who built an empire on sexual imagery.
Definitely might surprise some.
Right.
Playboy has had an on-again, off-again relationship with publishing nudes,
Right.
and is now seriously considering ceasing print publication altogether to focus on brand licensing. Could be the end of an iconic era.
The media landscape is constantly changing. Even established brands need to adapt. Now let's turn our attention to the surprising ways sex and sexuality intersect with politics and law.
Right. This is where we see how deeply embedded these issues are in our social structures and regulations,
Mhm.
often with some rather unexpected, even bizarre outcomes.
Indeed. Take Dennis Hoff, the infamous brothel owner and HBO reality star.
Oh, yeah, him.
He actually won a seat in the Nevada State Assembly, posthumously.
After he died.
Yeah. His body was even reportedly discovered by porn star Ron Jeremy. A story that seems almost too strange to be true.
Only in Nevada, right? Roman law had a very clear stance on monogamy. Considered multiple wives harlots and their children spurious bastards.
Not exactly subtle language. A very direct, legally defined approach.
Egypt once attempted to ban the import of Chinese-made fake hymens,
Fake hyens.
membrane-like products marketed to simulate virginity. Reflects intense cultural pressures around female virginity in some societies. The lengths people go to uphold appearances.
Despite a lack of evidence linking Halloween to increased danger from sexual predators,
Yeah.
some places have ordered registered sex offenders to report to City Hall on Halloween night or even banned them from displaying decorations. Highlights heightened anxieties, sometimes leading to measures not entirely evidence-based.
In 17th century France, where divorce wasn't allowed,
Right.
couples could seek annulment for non-consummation. This led to invasive impotence trials involving public questioning and medical exams to determine the husband's ability.
Impotence trials. Talk about a lack of marital privacy. Absolutely intrusive.
And the rumors about Catherine the Great dying by horse are untrue.
Thankfully.
But she did reportedly own furniture decorated with small sculptures of female genitalia.
Vulva furniture, a rather unique interior decorating choice, offers a glimpse into personal tastes.
Interestingly, studies suggest polygamous societies tend to have higher crime rates,
Why?
potentially due to a larger number of unmarried men. A complex sociological correlation, demographics can have significant social consequences.
Similarly, China's historically unbalanced gender ratio, more men than women, has also been linked to rising crime rates in some studies. Underscores broad societal impacts of demographic shifts.
The U.S. had its first eugenics law passed in Indiana in 1907,
Eugenics.
leading to forced sterilization of people deemed unfit. Upheld by the Supreme Court in Buck v. Bell, even cited by Nazi war criminals as inspiration.
A dark and shameful chapter in American legal history highlights the dangers of pseudoscience influencing law. A chilling reminder.
Some organizations with problematic pasts have changed their names, like the Catholic Church's Inquisition, and the American Eugenics Society became the Society for the Study of Social Biology, an attempt to distance themselves from discredited histories.
Precisely. The Coolidge effect, describing renewed sexual interest in new partners.
Yeah.
Named after an apocryphal anecdote about President Calvin Coolidge and a rooster. Even presidential folklore makes its way into scientific terminology. You never know where these terms originate.
Henry Kissinger famously quipped that power is the ultimate aphrodisiac.
Cynical, but perhaps insightful, the intersection of sex and power is a recurring theme.
Alexander Hamilton's sex scandal involved an affair with a married woman, payments to her husband for silence, all eventually exposed by a rival.
Early American political intrigue.
Yeah.
Founding fathers behaving like humans.
The Mann Act, early 20th century, technically made it illegal to transport someone across state lines for immoral purposes, including sex,
Aimed at prostitution.
seemingly, but often used for political opportunism and targeting individuals on moral grounds. a law with wider reach than intended.
It's exactly. Nebraska even adopted castration as punishment for sex offenders in the 1920s.
Castration, a drastic and highly controversial measure. Harsh and irreversible.
The Independent newspaper once published a surprisingly detailed description of Bill Clinton's penis.
Really? Not typical political reporting. Underscores intense public fascination with personal lives.
President Warren Harding's mistress reportedly nicknamed her vagina Mrs. Powderson.
Mrs. Patterson. Even presidents' intimate relationships become part of the record, sometimes unusually. Intimate details entering public knowledge.
More recently, Stormy Daniels famously claimed Donald Trump's penis resembled Toad from Mario.
Toad for Mario. These vivid comparisons capture public attention, become part of the cultural commentary.
John Brinkley, a self-proclaimed goat gland quack,
Goop glands.
rose to prominence claiming transplanting goat testicles into men cured impotence. His practices, wildly popular for a time, led to many deaths and were exposed as fraudulent. Highlights dangers of unproven medical claims. A truly dangerous charlatan.
Despite his polio, President Franklin Roosevelt reportedly had extramarital affairs. His doctor even commented, "It's only his legs that are paralyzed," suggesting potency remained.
His private life was largely shielded back then, a different era of media and presidential privacy.
In a more recent political controversy, Michigan State Representative Lisa Brown was temporarily banned from speaking.
Why?
For using the word vagina during an abortion debate. She later protested alongside Eve Ensler. Highlights ongoing debates around reproductive rights and language, the power of words.
Michigan also had a sensational scandal involving legislators Todd Courser and Cindy Gamrat.
Oh yeah, the affair.
Their affair. Plus, Courser's attempt to cover it up with a fabricated rumor about a male prostitute led to their removal from office and criminal charges. A real-life political soap opera. A vivid example.
In 2011, a report in Saudi Arabia claimed allowing women to drive would lead to, well, all sorts of negative social consequences.
Like what?
No more virgins, increased prostitution, pornography, homosexuality, divorce. The driving ban was eventually lifted in 2018. Reflects a deeply conservative worldview and anxieties about social change.
A proposed robot brothel in Houston was ultimately banned by the city council.
Robot brothels.
The ethical and societal implications of sex robots are clearly subjects of ongoing debate and regulation. As tech advances, these are complex questions for policymakers.
James Buchanan, the only unmarried U.S. president,
Right.
lived with his bachelor Vice President William Rufus King. This leads some historians to consider him a potential gay icon viewed through a modern lens, reinterpreting historical figures based on contemporary understandings, re-examining the past.
Surprisingly, many U.S. states still lack specific laws explicitly banning necrophilia.
Really? No laws?
It's a legal gap highlighting evolving understanding of criminal behavior and morality. Points to areas where legal frameworks haven't kept pace.
Finally, let's turn our attention to the often surprising connections between sex and the economy.
Ah, yes. Money and well. Always an interesting equation. Many seemingly unrelated companies profit indirectly from porn.
Like who?
Phone carriers like AT&T, satellite TV like DirecTV, even hotel chains like Marriott. It's a significant, but often overlooked economic sector. The hidden engine.
LGBT communities are often significant drivers of gentrification in urban areas,
How so?
tending to reside in city centers, contributing to neighborhood redevelopment. Their preferences for urban living, often less influenced by school districts, have played a role in revitalizing many urban cores. Highlights the economic impact of diverse populations.
Germany even implemented a program to retrain prostitutes as elder care nurses.
Retraining prostitutes for elder care.
To address a worker shortage, a rather pragmatic and unusual approach to workforce development. Unique solution.
The congressional war on phone sex in the 80s,
Yeah.
aimed at regulation, inadvertently led to many phone sex jobs moving overseas to places like São Tomé, demonstrates how legislative actions can have unintended global economic consequences. Attempting to regulate one sector can ripple unexpectedly.
Interestingly, studies in the U.S. and Canada have linked raising alcohol taxes to a decrease in risky sexual behavior and lower rates of gonorrhea, suggests a potential public health benefit to certain economic policies. Taxing vices to improve well-being.
The pornography industry has had to adapt to online piracy,
Oh.
developing new business models like licensing content, embracing live camming platforms, shows the resilience and adaptability of businesses in the digital age. Innovation driven by necessity.
In a rather unexpected correlation, a researcher found countries with smaller average penis size tended to have greater GDP growth between 1960 and 1985. Important. Correlation, not causation.
Smaller penis, bigger economy. A surprising statistic nonetheless. Size isn't everything. Apparently not even for national economies.
Social Security in the U.S. is estimated to lower fertility rates by about half a child per woman,
Why?
as it reduces economic reliance on having children for old-age support. Highlights how social welfare policies influence demographic trends, often with long-term implications.
Singapore even had a national night event.
National Night.
Sponsored by Mentos, actually, to encourage patriotism and procreation. Aimed at boosting the birth rate, a very direct approach. Do it for your country.
Denmark, facing its own low birth rate, has seen travel agencies promoting vacations for adult children,
Why?
with the explicit goal of encouraging them to have grandchildren. Talk about a targeted marketing strategy, a creative approach to demographic challenges.
Even cryptocurrency has seen a connection to sex. One digital currency pegged to demand for synthetic rhino horn aphrodisiac pills.
Rhino horn crypto, a niche market in the already niche world of crypto. The blockchain meets traditional beliefs.
Under Armour implemented a policy in 2018 prohibiting employees from using company credit cards for visits to strip clubs.
Sensible. Reflects evolving corporate standards and risk management.
Japan has a complex history with reproductive health. Abortion legalized in 1948, but birth control pills weren't approved until 1999. Faced significant opposition from abortion doctors. Highlights the intricate interplay of social, medical, economic factors. The path to rights is often winding.
Japan is also facing a dramatic aging population. Projections. More people over 100 than newborns by 2040.
Wow.
Sales of adult diapers surpassed baby diapers in 2011. Officials warned of potential societal extinction if birth rates don't improve. A stark illustration of economic and social consequences of declining fertility. A significant demographic shift.
Okay, let's briefly touch on sex and the military.
Right. Another surprising intersection.
Boston Corbett, the guy who killed Lincoln's assassin,
Yeah.
castrated himself to avoid sexual temptation after being turned on by prostitutes.
Castrated himself. Wow. Extreme measure.
The origin of the term hooker, some suggest it derives from Civil War officer Joseph Hooker, whose squad was associated with prostitutes.
Hooker the general. Interesting, though, debated.
General John J. Pershing, WWI leader, supported a VD-free army, but contracted gonorrhea twice himself.
Oops. Leading by example.
The early 1900s War Department demanded sexual abstinence. Pamphlets like, "Live straight if you would shoot straight."
Catchy slogan.
Venereal disease in the early 20th century U.S. military caused more missed combat days than anything except the influenza epidemic.
Huge impact.
Red Cross nurses in Veracruz during the Pancho Villa expedition inspected prostitutes for VD for regulated prostitution.
Regulated prostitution by the military. Wow.
There's debate among historians whether Adolf Hitler had a micropenis.
Hitler. That old chestnut.
Genghis Khan may have more than 16 million descendants today.
16 million. Talk about spreading your gene.
Napoleon Bonaparte's penis was reportedly 1.5 inches long, described unflatteringly, and bought at auction.
Napoleon's.
Yeah.
History gets personal. Okay, how about sex and religion?
Another complex relationship. A Russian Christian sect, the Skopsi,
Sapsi.
castrated themselves and cut off breasts for spiritual purity.
Extreme asceticism.
Temporary marriages in some Muslim countries are sometimes used as religious cover for sex.
Temporary marriage, right? Muta.
English law's obscenity test from 1868 came from a case involving anti-Catholic pamphlets describing priests' arousal.
Obscenity law from anti-Catholic pamphlets. Huh.
Iran's approach to homosexuality. Punishable by death, but allows sex reassignment surgery.
A complex and controversial stance.
There's a pagan temple in Montreal devoted to penises. Requires members to play with them.
Penis temple.
Greek gods give us sex terms. Aphrodite, aphrodisiac, hermaphrodite, Aphrodite plus Hermes. Priapism.
Priapus.
Priapus, the god of fertility.
Ancient Roman gardeners used Priapus replicas as scarecrows.
Penis scarecrows.
Yeah.
Effective, maybe.
Colonial Connecticut Puritans executed a man for alleged bestiality with a pig.
Harsh Puritan justice.
Japan's Shinto fertility ritual involves an annual festival celebrating giant dongs.
Sorry, right. The penis festival.
Holy men in Varanasi, India, cut and pierce their penises as worship.
Intense devotion.
Medieval Christian theologians sometimes viewed prostitution as a necessary evil, like a sewer preventing worse
The
problems.
sewer analogy, yeah. Pragmatic if grim.
The Old Testament considers sex with a menstruating wife a sin like adultery.
Ritual purity laws.
Early Christianity, some theologians imposed stricter penance for anal sex than for homicide.
Priorities.
The Catholic Church's ban on clerical marriage faced resistance. One priest was burned alive in 1077 France for opposing it.
Burned alive. Wow.
Catholic priests reportedly had a higher AIDS death rate than the general male population in the U.S. after HIV awareness rose.
Concerning statistic.
Economics and seminary enrollment. Increased unemployment linked to increased enrollment.
Interesting correlation. Fewer job options, more priests.
Reverend Gerald Fitzgerald's congregation dealt with priests' behavioral problems, including pedophilia, sought a private island for isolation.
Trying to contain the problem.
Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart's obscenity definition, I know it when I see it.
Famous line.
Echoed by a Catholic official regarding banning gay men from priesthood.
Subjective judgment.
John Rock, co-inventor of the birth control pill, was a devout Catholic. He designed the pill around a 28-day cycle, hoping for church approval by mimicking the natural menstrual cycle. Didn't work out that way.
Trying to find a loophole.
A Buddhist monastery in Bhutan. Monks use wooden phalluses to bless visitors seeking children.
Phallic blessings.
In the Middle Ages, multiple churches claimed possession of Jesus' foreskin.
The holy foreskin. Relic competition.
Old Testament views on STDs were harsh, possibly influenced by deadly, misunderstood diseases. Theory. Sexually restrictive religions survived while ritualistic ones died out, but not too restrictive, like the Shakers who died out from celibacy.
Survival of the moderately repressed.
Hindu astrology claims men with big penises will be poor and have no sons.
Bad news for some.
Reproductive assistance in the Middle East. Sunni-Shia differences. Infertile Sunni couples sometimes seek Shia territories for broader options due to cultural restrictions on adoption.
Navigating religious and cultural rules for family building. Finally, let's wrap up with sex and culture.
Right, the societal norms and practices. Korean eunuchs lived 19 years longer than other men, according to one study.
Longer lives without testicles. Interesting finding.
Tanning. Western desire for darker skin contrasts with Asian preference for light skin. Beauty standards vary wildly.
Gladiator sweat was considered an aphrodisiac in ancient Rome.
Gladiator sweat. Ew.
Aphrodisiac foods often resemble genitalia. Oysters, bananas, the doctrine of signatures.
Ithithalophobia is the fear of penises.
There's a phobia for everything.
The Museum of Russian Erotica claims to have Rasputin's 13-inch penis in a jar.
Rasputin's preserved penis. Highly dubious, but a persistent legend.
Tel Aviv Ad Agency in 1994 used the slogan linking aggressive drivers to small penises.
Road rage and penis size. Bold ad.
Female education linked to decreased birth rates. Historically, there was concern higher education would make women functionally castrated.
Fear of educated women.
The U.S. divorce rate myth, 50% and climbing, is false. Rates have actually declined since the 70s, 80s peak.
Good to correct that myth.
Divorce ceremonies in Japan sometimes involve breaking wedding rings with hammers.
Ritualistic ending.
Altering breasts. Compressed in 7th century Spain, distended in Paraguay, enlarged in the U.S., cultural ideals change.
Obsession with big penises isn't universal. Ancient Greeks found small penises most beautiful.
Different strokes.
Estimated LGBT population is around 5% or less, but over a third of Americans believe it's at least 25%. Perception versus reality gap.
Greek and Balkan tradition. Men dancing with a handkerchief under the armpit to present their scent to desired women.
Send signals.
Modesty is relative. Some Amazonian women traditionally wore only a waist cord.
Cultural context is everything.
U.S. marriage ages were younger in the 1950s than in the late 1800s.
Interesting reversal.
The word avocado comes from the Aztec word acocatl, meaning both fruit and testicle.
Avocado testicles. Etymology is fun.
Prenuptial kidnappings used to occur in Lombok, Indonesia.
Bride kidnapping. Yikes.
The world's only eunuch museum is outside Beijing.
Unique museum. Niche history.
U.S. teens are actually having less sex than their parents' generation did as teens.
Declining teen sex rates. Interesting trend.
Monogamy's only been legally enforced globally in the past few hundred years. Historically, it wasn't the only model.
About 15% of cultures in the Ethnographic Atlas Codebook were strictly monogamous.
Married people generally report more frequent and satisfying sex lives than singles, according to research.
Marriage benefits. In the bedroom.
Cousin marriage in the U.S. is rare today, 0.2%, but historically much more common. Estimated 80% of all marriages were first-second cousins at one point.
Wow, 80%. Huge historical shift.
Double cousins are legally prohibited from marrying in North Carolina, despite no direct biological relation. Quirky law.
Cynic Greek philosopher Diogenes practiced public masturbation as protest.
Diogenes the Cynic, making a statement. There's a penis shrine in Bangkok, popular spot.
Lingam shrines, yeah.
Yeah.
Fertility symbols.
Medieval European fashion. Long, pointy shoes believed to correlate with penis size, sometimes stuffed for effect.
Pointy shoes, big.
That's-
Fashion myths.
Gawker's Hulk Hogan sex tape lawsuit. Hogan denied having a 10-inch penis in court.
Courtroom penis-size denial. Strange times.
Circumcision popularity in the U.S. was partly fueled by the belief it reduced masturbation.
Anti-masturbation drive again.
Mary Shelley allegedly lost her virginity on her mother's grave and kept her husband Percy's heart after he died.
Gothic romance indeed. Intense.
Well, that was quite the deep dive into the wonderfully weird world of sex. We've certainly uncovered some truly surprising and often bizarre connections, haven't we?
Absolutely. It underscores just how deeply interwoven this fundamental aspect of life is, with so many facets of our world, both natural and human-made.
From head-mounted slug penises to the surprising economic impact of pornography, we've barely scratched the surface, but hopefully given you a shortcut to being a bit more informed about the less conventional side of sex.
And as you reflect on all these diverse and sometimes startling facts, what resonates most with you? What piece of information most challenged your assumptions or sparked your curiosity?
Yeah, maybe revisiting our sources, like that Sex Weird-O-Pedia book, might lead to even more unexpected discoveries.
Exactly. This deep dive really highlights that sex is far more than just a biological act. It's a lens through which we can examine the strange and fascinating workings of nature, society, and ourselves.
Thanks for exploring the depths with us.